Welcome to the Becoming Superhuman podcast, where we interview extraordinary people to bring you the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Levy.
Hey there, boys and girls. This is Jonathan Levy, and I have a treat for you today. In many of the episodes thus far, we've talked a lot about the World Memory Championships and different techniques like memory palaces that are used by elite memory athletes, but we have yet to actually meet one. Fortunately, that's about to change. My guest this week is Mr. Nelson Dellis, three-time USA memory champion, record holder, and one of only 3 Grandmasters of Memory in the United States. But that's just the beginning of Nelson's superhuman credentials. He's also an accomplished mountain climber, the founder of a nonprofit combating Alzheimer's, and a renowned public speaker, and so much more. This interview was an insane amount of fun to work on. Nelson and I discussed memory, willpower, and how his 2 fields of expertise, memory and rock climbing, cross-pollinate and make him a better all-around superhuman. Nelson has been featured on dozens of publications, documentaries, and TV shows, ranging from CNN and NBC Nightline to the Dr. Oz show and even the Wall Street Journal. I hope you have as much fun listening to the interview as we had recording it. And now I'm very excited to welcome Mr. Nelson Dellis. Nelson, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you for having me. I'm very good. How are you?
Doing very, very well. And I really appreciate you making the time. I know you're super, super busy.
Yeah, always memorizing.
Indeed. So we actually were introduced through a mutual friend, which was really, really cool. You have kind of studied all over the place, as I understand it.
Yeah, I grew up in London. I was born in London, and my family had us moving all over the place growing up, and our mutual friend is someone I met while living in London one of those years.
Very cool. So give us a bit of professional background for those who don't know. I tried my best to summarize it in the introduction, but you're kind of a very eclectic fellow and working in very different fields. So I'm always curious to hear how people such as yourself summarize what you do at cocktail parties.
Yeah, it's hard to, it depends on my mood, because I guess most people don't even know what it is if I say what it is in a couple of words. So I usually have to explain it, right? Mm-hmm. But some days I'm just like, I'm a consultant. Or if I'm feeling a little more adventurous, I'll say I'm a speaker/consultant. And then if I'm really feeling, good enough to explain it all, I'll just say I'm a teacher. I teach people how to improve their memories. I'm a memory expert. I give speeches, conferences, seminars, things like that.
Very cool. So it's kind of tough when you have such a diverse resume to kind of break it down and summarize it, I guess.
Yeah. Because, it always leads to more questions, and sometimes it's not the right time. So you just say, I'm a consultant.
Yeah, that's the easy way out, I guess.
Yeah.
So when you tell people that you're, a 3-time national memory champion, what are some of the responses that they give you?
They're usually like, either they'll say, wait, what does that mean? And then I follow, or they'll say, like, what do you mean at the game of memory, where you're flipping over cards? Or the third one is, do you play blackjack?
Yeah, I guess that's probably a pretty logical question.
Yeah.
Although I don't know that memory would help you in kind of today's context where there's so many decks. You can memorize it as many decks, but they're constantly shuffling them.
Right, exactly. It's exactly that. A lot of people just think that the first thing they actually ask is, do you count cards? Which has nothing to do with memory.
Right.
But there are some techniques that do use memory, but they're so difficult, and they only work in some specific casinos where they use a certain amount of card decks and how they shuffle it and stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, and as if you weren't busy enough with the mountain climbing and the consulting and the teaching and the Alzheimer's work you're doing and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's to do that. I actually dabbled in it a little bit with a few friends. We started a team, but it just took too much time. To get good at it, you have to spend a lot of time.
Yeah, that's fair. So one thing that I have found between all the memory athletes that I've read up on, whether it's yourself, Ed Cook, Ben Pridmore, none of you guys actually claim to have an exceptional memory or any kind of special ability. Do you find that to be true throughout the community?
Yeah, it's one of the most surprising things to me. Well, it was when I started. I never believed that. These memory competitions sounded like it was just for savants or some people with just naturally good memories. But it is a fact that across the board, the top guys, if not everyone who competes in these things, they're trained from average memories to these phenomenal, prodigious-like memories.
Mm-hmm. So how much of it then is technique and how much of it is just really, really intense work ethic?
Yeah, I guess starting out, you have to learn the techniques, of course. You have to learn about how this works. It's quick and easy. The concepts can be explained in a half hour.
Right.
There are kind of little intricacies in terms of strategy on how to, do it for numbers or for cards or for different things. But once you figure that out, all it is from that point is practice. So, and I think you'll find that the guys who win these competitions, whether it's the US Championship, the World Championships, the UK Championship, whatever, it comes down to who spent the most time practicing.
Yeah.
The best and the longest.
Yeah. In fact, I saw an infographic actually on Mashable that detailed kind of your training schedule. And I think at your peak, you were doing about 4 to 5 hours a day. Yeah.
Yep. I remember that was from last year. Leading up to that championship last March, I was doing 4 to 5 hours. And yeah, that's a lot. A lot of people can't afford to do that, but somehow my work has allowed me to do that. I mean, I know I say consultant, whatever, but in some sense, I'm kind of like an athlete. I mean, I hate using that because I'm not like LeBron or anything like that at all. But I do spend most of my day working on my craft and training my skill.
But you're also kind of a physical athlete. I don't know if you would consider yourself in your rock climbing career to be an athlete, but I certainly would. Sure.
So, yeah, I'm definitely an athlete type of person. I'm physically training every single day, if not twice a day, and I'm climbing. I'm climbing a lot. That's what I love to do, and I always like to be physically fit and strong. But yeah, in terms of my sit down and memorizing training, that's what I meant. It's not really athletic. It's mental athletics, I guess. Yeah.
So break down your day for me, and then I'm also curious to hear what kind of training you're doing physical fitness wise. But how do you pass your day? How do you devote time now that you're not in competition season? What does a typical day kind of look like for you?
Sure. Well, actually, I am picking up speed. I mean, the US Championship's right around the corner. So right now, it's getting up to the 4 or 5 hour range where I'll wake up, usually go to the gym first thing, and then when I come back, I work on cards for a bit, and then I get into numbers, have lunch, then work on names and faces, poems and words, and I do all sorts of drills and things like that. And yeah, it's just I just train the events that they have at these competitions, and I just do them over and over and over again.
I see. So one of the things I teach in my course on accelerated learning is kind of that people should get ready for the fact that when you're really, really using your memory, really, really using your cognitive faculties, it's exhausting. The brain takes about 20% of the energy resources of the body, hugely disproportionate to, its mass or size in the body. Are you, after those 4 to 5 hours, do you have anything left in the tank for work?
That's a good question. I never really notice that. I mean, in competition, for sure, I get super drained, but I always thought that was just because my focus is so intense for so long.
Yeah.
And I'm stressed as well for long periods of time and nervous and whatever, and that takes a toll. But when I'm training and using these memory techniques, I don't really feel that exhaustion at the end of the day. I do split it up a lot. I take a lot of breaks. Maybe that helps.
Mm-hmm. Are you kind of on the Pomodoro technique, so to speak?
I'm not familiar with that. What is that?
It's the idea that you take a break every, I think it's 25 to 50 minutes. You take a 5-minute break. It's kind of one of these productivity book written in the 80s by an Italian grad student.
Okay. Yeah, I actually do that. But I didn't know that was a technique.
Interesting. I'll have to send you the link.
Yeah, please.
So very cool. So 4 to 5 hours a day training. I noticed that you do your physical fitness before, which I think is probably a very conscious decision.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like my day goes smoother if I wake up and work out. I just have more energy and more kind of motivation from that point on.
Right.
I've sometimes done it in the afternoon, but I find that those days I kind of like lag a little bit,
Yeah.
getting started and stuff.
The endorphins from your workout are really, really instrumental in proper memory function and stuff like that. So it makes a ton of sense. What's your sleep routine look like? Are you kind of sleeping in one large chunk? I'm just curious because sleep is really, really important for memory specifically.
Of course. I don't sleep very well. I've actually never slept well, I think, in my life.
Really?
Which sucks. Yeah. I can probably tell you on counting on my hands the times that I've had like a really good sleep. Like I remember them. They were that good, you know?
Wow.
But I sleep all at once. I don't do any of these napping type techniques. I always try to go to sleep at a reasonable hour, and I always wake up at 6 or 7. But I usually end up going to bed between midnight and 2 a.m.
Oh, wow.
Not the best, I know. That's one of the things I know I could fix up. But it's just, sleeping for me has always been rough. I wake up easily, and I don't know. It's tough.
Interesting. That surprises me, actually.
Yeah. No, I know. I know how important it is. And there's been days where I couldn't fall asleep at all when I had a big memory thing the next day, and it's just screwed me over.
Wow. That's surprising.
Yeah.
What about nootropics or smart drugs, which for those who aren't familiar with the term, they're kind of these side effect free supplements and herbs that you can take to, I guess, optimize your brain health. So GABA inhibitors, stuff like that. Are you using any nootropics? Am I allowed to ask that?
Yeah, sure. I'm not. The only thing I take religiously is DHA omega-3.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take about 1,000 milligrams every morning.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, that's important to me. I've never really looked into this nootropic stuff. I've heard about it, but I don't really know much about it. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I should try it.
Super interesting that at your level, it sounds like it's almost 100% work ethic and just putting in the hours.
Totally. Yeah. And I think if I was on some supplement, I don't think it would give me that much of an edge, at least not at the competitive level it is in this world right now. You know, I was talking with, I'm a good friend of Lindsey Vohn's sister, a famous skier, and she was telling me how, you know, recently she didn't win her downhill at Vail, and, you know, she came in 5th, but that it was just, she was talking about all these times she had a race, and these tiny little things make a difference of like, you know, 100th of a second. Like, for example, one race she had a Band-Aid under her eye, and she said that the drag on that was the reason why she didn't win it.
My God.
And I was like, that's crazy. But in our sport, it's not quite saturated yet with enough competition that those little tiny things will make a huge difference, will make you win. So right now I'm not really concerned with that, but who knows in the future, maybe whether you take some little extra brain drug, it'll make
right
a fraction of a difference that makes you win. Who knows? Yeah,
it's funny you mentioned the Band-Aid, because in one episode, or actually I was on a podcast of Anthony Metivier, who's kind of a memory expert, and he and I talked about the kinesiology tape effect, where the competition in something like the Olympics is so fierce that something small like kinesiology tape or softer fabric on the swimsuits can actually mean a win. And then, of course, every team comes back the next year with that exact incremental improvement. Do you think that virtually all memory athletes are using variations on the same basic techniques? And if so, how much are those variations at play in who wins every year?
Yeah, I mean, from a ground level, everybody's using the same thing. If you're going to win, you're using pretty much the same technique. You'll find that the top guys will have some strategy or slight variations on the strategies that, to master those, take more hours. It comes down again to more hours spent studying your systems, learning them, and being able to apply them. So yeah, I mean, but the thing is for example, Ben Pridmore is a great example. I guess this was maybe 2005 he came, or 2004. He came up with this Ben card system where instead of just looking at a single card and being able to imagine it as an image, he would put pairs of cards together. And before, I guess nobody had really thought about that, or maybe people had thought about it but not really sat down and come up with the 2,700 plus images that you have to have for every combination. But he did it, and, you know, the next year and ever since then, there's been people who are like, I'm learning my bend system. I'm going to do the bend system.
Wow.
But the thing is that it's not as easy as just slapping on some tape or putting on a swimsuit, because you actually have to learn these 2,000 plus images like the back of your hand. And that means many hours, and not anybody can do that. A lot of people had the intention to. I know I have at many points. I've been like, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to sit down, I'm going to learn it. And then it fizzles out. It's quite a commitment. So I don't know. They're like going back to what you were saying about supplements. That might be a way that in the future that it'll make a difference. But for now, the strategies and coming up with new little variations, it's time consuming. So it's not as easy as just saying you want to do it and doing it. You got to spend the time, you know?
Sure. So people are using typically the bend system, because I recently read Josh Foer's book. I'm sure you've been asked 100,000 times about it, but Moonwalking with Einstein. And he talks about a system of threes where you have subject, verb, object for every card. And then you take the subject from the first card, object, so on and so forth. So you create something like Phil Knight Moonwalking with Einstein. Are people not using that system anymore?
No, I'd say that's probably the most popular. That's what I use.
Oh, okay.
But the bend system, this is kind of weird, but the idea is the same. I mean, you have three things that you kind of squish together into one image, whether it's person, action, object, or I think Ben uses three objects and he just kind of like imagines them together. But the encoding part is the difference. You know, instead of looking at each card, that's a person, next card, that's an action, next card, that's an object, he's looking at the first two cards as a thing, the next two cards as a thing, and the next two cards as a thing. So he's able to squash 6 cards into one picture, whereas Josh Foer and me and the majority of people doing person, action, object are just squishing 3.
Wow. And Ben actually, if I'm not mistaken, still holds the world record, which I think is a deck of cards in 26 seconds.
Well, actually, that fell. He changed the record a number of years ago to 24 and change.
Wow.
And then Simon Reinhardt, who is the German champion and the runner-up to the world champion, he's at 21.19 seconds.
My gosh. And I think just 10 years ago, it was considered very impressive to do it in under a minute.
Yeah. It's crazy. 21 seconds. And I know in practice he's even hit about 18 or 19 seconds, which is crazy. Sub 20 seconds, yeah.
Incredible. So, in fact, Josh's book, or Josh Foer's book, is pretty accurate, and those are still the techniques that people are using every year at the competition.
That's correct, yeah.
Amazing. And these are techniques, I mean, we haven't talked about it, but it seems that everyone's using the memory palace technique or variations on the memory palace technique, which is many thousands of years old.
Yeah, I'd say if you're at the top trying to be competitive in these competitions, that's what you and everybody else are using, some variation of the memory palace technique for sure.
Interesting. So you have a memory palace, I imagine, since you're now doing many decks of cards, not just one. So you have a memory palace for each deck of cards. You have one memory palace with, 500 loci. How does that work?
So I've tried to count them, but I have so many, it's tough. I have about 50 different memory palaces, different sizes for cards, for example. To memorize a deck of cards, I only need 17 places in my memory palace, plus a leftover card. So they're relatively short. So I have a lot of those that I cycle through when I train. And then for numbers, for example, I have really, really long ones that are 100 plus. And I really like to call it, instead of memory palace, I call it the journey method, because I don't get stuck in one house. I'm taking a journey from one location all the way to another. So for example, a lot of them take place in my hometown in Miami. So, I'll be taking a journey all over the city when I'm memorizing numbers and things like that. Yeah.
And you're reusing the same locations every time?
Yeah, every time. I mean, I have a number of them, so I cycle through them every time I do a set of numbers or cards, so I don't get too confused.
I see.
And I try to have enough to cycle through so that by the time I come back to the one I want to use, it's kind of forgotten itself, by then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because a lot of people talk about having to actually sit there and do spring cleaning before a competition.
Yeah, I know some people will do that. I've never done it, I think, because then I start thinking about the actual journey or memory palace, and that, I think, always kind of makes me think about what I maybe had there before. I don't like it. So
interesting.
I just don't think about it.
If I asked you a week after the competition, is that stuff still in there in your memory palaces?
A little bit. It depends on a lot of things. For example, one year I remember I lost off of a stupid mistake, and I remember a lot of that deck still, not on purpose, but just because it was very memorable situation. I'd say a week after, I'd still probably remember quite a bit of it.
Wow. Yeah. Without any review.
Without any review, yeah.
Amazing. So actually, that brings up a good point. I'm really interested in your approach to goals and accomplishment and motivation. So I saw that your most recent attempt to reach the peak of Everest was stopped pretty much a football field short by equipment failure and things really beyond your control. And as you said, you had one stupid mistake that cost you a winning streak of 3 years, which was now kind of broken up in 2013. None of it really seems to faze or discourage you. Tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah. So in, 2013, I was on Everest. It was my second attempt. I had failed in 2011, even less than a football field.
Wow.
And yeah, so, this time around, I don't know, it was just mountain climbing, especially on Everest, it's its own thing. I mean, I don't want to die. I don't want to lose fingers. I want to be okay. I want to come back down. So the second time I did this, and I was kind of not in a good place with my body temperature. I couldn't feel my hands or fingers. I was like, okay, I mean, I'm happy with where I got to. I need to turn around now. So
wow,
that was okay. And I know I'll go back at some point and try it again.
So it sounds like it's a lot of just separating your ego from reality and saying, you know what, is it my ego or do I really need to go that extra 200 feet and risk my life?
Right. I mean, mountain climbing you have to think like that because it's actually death that could be the result if you don't think like that. With memory stuff, it's not that bad. Yeah, it would have been nice to win 3 in a row or 4 in a row, but that year, who knows? I was maybe a bit too confident at the end and didn't focus as much as I should have, and that's what was the cause of it. I'll never really know, but I lost, and it fueled me to come back even stronger the next year. So
yeah,
that's how I look at those things. It's part of the journey, and you fail for a reason, and all you do is you just take that and use it for motivation the next time.
Awesome. Yeah. I love that approach because otherwise you can get into kind of this unhealthy mindset that just pollutes your ability to train next time and come back harder next time.
Yeah, and I mean, with Everest, for example, I have failed twice, and it would be, and I see people around me summiting who I thought I was stronger than, and you question, like, what's wrong with me? Can I not do this? Am I weak? Am I not well trained? And it's just at this point I know I can do it, even though I wasn't able to then. It's just a matter of getting everything right all at once and coming back as strong as I can.
What does the term summiting mean? I'm sorry?
Summiting, like getting to the top of the mountain.
Okay. So that's the term for when you reach the absolute tip top.
Yeah. I've summited. I am summiting right now. I have just summited. Yes.
Awesome. Summited versus submitted, I guess.
Yeah. Well, no submitting.
So that brings up actually a really good point as well. And I like how you made this comparison between the stakes in memory competition and the stakes in rock climbing. And I think what's really, really interesting is the synergies between the both. I don't know if you've read Josh Waitzkin's book, The Art of Learning, but it kind of reminded me where you were saying of his learning philosophy, because he's a Tai Chi champion and obviously a chess grandmaster, a world champion at a very young age. And in his book, he kind of draws this one learning philosophy through them. And he explains, in one sentence that I particularly remember, he's like, I wasn't doing Tai Chi, although I was on a Tai Chi mat, I was playing chess, right? And the movements came out as Tai Chi. Do you find that kind of spillover and these kinds of synergies between the two disciplines that you practice?
Yeah, that's a great thing you bring up. Because obviously memory and competing with your memory requires a lot of focus and cognitive thought and concentration and all that stuff. I feel like me being good at that comes from being in the mountains, because mountaineering, not a lot of people would realize this, but it's probably mostly mental.
Mm-hmm.
You have these long days, you're climbing for 8+ hours sometimes. You can't breathe. It's cold. It's hot. The sun's burning. It's boring. You put one step in front of the other. It's painful. You take a step. You have to breathe for like a few seconds, and you take another step. And it's like that for 8 hours. Just you by yourself, right, in your head. So I
Wow.
think you learn a lot. It's kind of a meditative process, I think. That's what it comes down to. And memorizing, being able to memorize fast and successfully is also a meditative process. So I think learning to be comfortable with silence and, introspection and just being able to sit there with your thoughts for long periods of time has made me good at the memory sport. I think also for training purposes too, being able to keep at it and stick with this kind of lonely sport,
Yeah, definitely. That raises two questions for me, so I'm going to hit you with them rapid fire. The first one is, where does that mental strength come from? Is that something that you were able to train, or have you always had this kind of ability to suffer and take it on the chin?
I don't know. I've thought about this a lot. I don't think I had it my whole life. I think it's something I learned from the mountains. I remember my first climbing experience. I went on Mount Rainier. I did a 8-day training course for beginners. And, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into, all other than, I could possibly summit Mount Rainier. And I thought that was super cool. We went out there. We got out of the parking lot. There were 8 or 9 of us following a guide. And it was a complete whiteout. And we were still in the trees, we were like 20 minutes from the parking lot. And it was just like a whiteout. It was cold. It was miserable. And our guides were like, yeah, we just got to make our campsite right here because it's really bad weather right now. And I'm like, what is this? This is horrible. Why am I even here? This is not fun. This is just like, why put yourself through this? And we set up our camp. And I remember we had like a team meeting. And one guy already was like, I want to go back down. I'm going to go home. And he said to us, he was like, one of our guys is going home. He doesn't want to be here. If anybody else wants to go, let us know now, because otherwise, you're stuck on this mountain for the next week. And I remember thinking, okay, I could raise my hand or not. And I don't know. I just didn't raise my hand and I got stuck there and it sucked. It was probably one of the worst experiences of my life, but I summited and that was the best experience of my life. And I think from that, having experience getting to a summit of a mountain, I realized, okay, you got to put up with some crappy situations, and that you just have to get through it. And that's a mental process. And, the reward is awesome. So I kept thinking of that every time I would climb again. And I think that's what led me to being able to train so well for memory competitions.
Right. This idea of delayed gratitude and being able to put off, and suffer so much because of the knowledge that it's going to be spectacular.
Yeah, totally.
The next question I wanted to ask is, you mentioned a meditative state. Do you meditate?
No, I've tried. I've read a lot about it, and I think it's great. I have a lot of friends who do. I hate saying that I can't do it because I know that I could if I tried, but I think I don't really need to. I think when I sit down and do my memory stuff, that it's really, I think I'm doing the same thing.
Likely, yeah. It's highly likely.
So I just see it as that's my meditation,
Well, and at 4 to 5 hours a day, that makes you a Zen master.
Yeah, I guess so.
So what drives you? What makes you excited to get out of bed in the morning and do the 4 to 5 hours of training and then do the nonprofit work and then do the consulting work on top of that and also get the workout in?
Oh, that's a tough question. I just usually just do it at this point. I don't know, because it's so habit. Yeah, it's habit right now. I don't know. I think I love the idea of always improving myself. Mm-hmm. Like with my workouts, I like goals and I like numbers that measure me. And I always want to beat those numbers. That's always what I'm aiming for. So whether it's my 1 rep max for clean and jerk or whatever lift I want to do, that's a number that I aim for and I try to beat all the time. And then same with memorizing a deck of cards. I have my personal best time and my goal is to keep beating that. Doesn't always happen, of course. I have days where I'm way slower than my best, but one day I break it by a few seconds and then that's my new personal best and I want to beat that.
What is your personal best right now for a deck of cards?
It's 29.84
Holy
seconds.
Crap. That makes you the fastest in America.
Well, I don't know. That's in practice. I've never done that fast in competition. A lot of people brag about their personal bests. Who knows if it's real or not? I've heard other people in America doing faster, but you never know.
Right.
My fastest in competition is 40 seconds, which is the fastest any American's done it. So
Right. You mentioned clean and jerk, total tangent, but are you a CrossFitter or are you just doing Ollie lifting?
No, I'm a CrossFitter.
Aha.
Yes.
Very, very cool. I'm also a diehard CrossFitter.
Oh, nice.
I was thinking it'd be really, really awesome to try and get Greg Glassman on the show. So that's going to be my goal for the next year.
That would be amazing. Actually, last year at the Memory Championships, there was a guy from CrossFit HQ, and because they wanted to get into kind of CrossFit, but with a brain element to it.
Huh.
And so I had just finished doing, what was it, the open WOD 14.4 or 5, I forget which one.
Oh, so much fun.
I couldn't even walk that day.
Yep.
And the guy was like, did you work out? I was like, yeah, I just did, whatever. And he was like, oh, you CrossFit? And I was like, yeah, I try to memorize, and I'm physically fit, and sometimes I even combine the two for fun to train. And he was like, wow, that's super cool. And then he didn't realize that I was the guy to beat and eventually be the champion. So he was like super excited. He's like, I'm going to Greg Glassman. We're going to talk. So we've talked a little bit. It's something I hope to get more into, kind of combining physical fitness and mental fitness.
I love it because they're so synergistic.
Totally. Yep.
So synergistic. Well, it's good to know that you're a fellow cult member as well.
For sure. Yeah. Awesome. You understand it.
I do. I've become obsessed, actually. Someone asked me yesterday, I said, I'm trying to beat my weight for deadlift. She goes, well, why do you need to be any stronger? My deadlift's almost 2 times my body weight at this point. And I go, because then I'll be better than I was yesterday. I'll be stronger than I was yesterday. And it didn't connect for this person. They just didn't get it. But what are you going to deadlift that's 130 kilos, So
that's funny.
Speaking of physical and mental health combining, you're very active, as I understand, in the fight against Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
What's going on with that right now? Or has there been any kind of recent research or any really interesting stuff that's going on?
Yeah, so, I got started in all of this just because my grandmother had Alzheimer's, and that got me all into the brain and brain health and stuff. So that's where this whole journey for me to become a memory champion started. Wow. So it's always been something super dear to my heart, and, I've always tried to kind of give back to that world. A lot of people don't really understand what Alzheimer's is or, what can be done about it. And the fact is still there's not much that, people know really about it still. Every once in a while something comes out saying they figured out, the reason for it or maybe an idea how to stop it, but it's never.
Sure.
You never hear about it again. So it's tough to say. I don't know.
Although I think it's really interesting, the synergies between memory and Alzheimer's as well, because I saw some research in 2006. I think it was from the Rush Institute. Don't quote me on that. But just that regular memorizing and a mental kind of cognitive performance routine can reduce, I think it was nuns, reduced the presence of Alzheimer's 10 years on or something like that by 47%. Again, don't quote me on that. I read it a long time ago, but really, really interesting. So is that essentially what Climb for Memory is devoted to?
Yeah, so Climb for Memory is the charity that I started, and the main goal of it is to just make people aware. And that my primary goal for that is really just to get people knowing about it, that it's real, that it's a problem, and it could happen. So that's really the first thing, because that's really my concern is so many people don't really know much about Alzheimer's or really see it happening or see it as a real disease. So the main goal of Climb for Memory is to really get people to be educated about it, to learn that it is a real problem. That's really the first thing, awareness,
Sure.
There's all these other, cancer and heart disease and breast cancer, whatever, they all gets amazing.
Yeah.
Awareness movements, and it's just Alzheimer's doesn't exist,
Yeah, look what they did with ALS last year, just hugely disproportional relative to the proportion of the population that suffers from ALS. Massively disproportional awareness and donation, which is, great if we can attack one disease at a time, but not great if things like Alzheimer's that are affecting millions and millions of people fall by the wayside.
Totally. Yeah.
So you're doing the climb for memory. You're training 4 to 5 hours a day. What else are you working on right now?
Lots of things. Book is in the works. I've been working on writing a book.
Very cool. On memory or on rock climbing or on both?
No, on memory. Basically a how-to book. I think that's very important for when I give speeches and stuff like that. I need to have something that people can walk away with, you know?
Yeah.
And Moonwalking with Einstein was a great book. I love that book.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember talking with Josh, and he was like, you should write a how-to book, because so many people ask me, where's like the accompanying manual on how to do these techniques. He kind of covers it, but not in a specific, here's how to do it way.
Right. And we can't all have Ed Cook coaching us for a year.
No,
unfortunately. Right.
That guy's great.
So working on a book, that's very exciting.
Yeah, TV shows. I almost had a show on Nat Geo go through, but that didn't end up so hard in that world. But there's a lot of people who want to develop a show.
Awesome. I would definitely watch it and recommend it to my students as well.
For sure. So there's that, and I don't know, just I have a lot of projects. Another big one is this extreme memory tournament. It's a competition that I created, and it's actually in its second year. It's going to be in May, and it's kind of a different approach to how to put on a memory competition, something that's a little more exciting and visual and audience friendly, and more sport-like. So that's moving along very nicely.
That's super cool because, you know, I work in memory and accelerated learning, and even I'm not particularly interested to watch hours of the current competitions. To be honest with you, it's a lot of guys sitting at tables in the quiet, you know, for an hour uninterrupted kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like it's watching someone take a test. Who wants to do that?
Yeah, exactly. So how do the kind of extreme memory games plan to cover that?
Yeah, so first things first is that it's all digital. That's the first thing. So they're all seeing the information on their laptop and then typing in, so the audience can see exactly what the competitors are seeing and memorizing. I think that's a really important thing because right now, you know, they're just looking at guys with their heads down and that's it. You know?
Sure.
The next thing is that it's all one-on-one stuff. It's not everybody taking a test against a clock. It's me versus you, and we have a time limit, but there's some strategy involved now because it's like, are you going to play it safe or should I just go for it? You know, and maybe we have more matches to do, and right now this one's more important, so maybe you're going to go for it. All these different things, and that makes it a lot more interesting.
Awesome.
And so it's 2-day competition. There's a lot of matches the first day where you get points, kind of like World Cup style, and then the top in each group advance the next day, and then you have like a NBA playoffs type thing with best of 7 series, and it's good.
That's awesome. Are you anticipating to get a lot of foreign and kind of international competitors involved?
Yeah, last year we played with 16 competitors and we invited them all. So we reached out to the best, and most of them, I mean, there were no Americans, unfortunately. I wanted to be there, but I was running the thing. But we had Germans, Swedes, Norwegians, British guys, Chinese, Mongolian. And this year we have a few Americans in there this time and people from everywhere. It's awesome.
That's awesome because historically the memory competition field has been, I think Americans have been largely underrepresented. So
yeah, exactly. We're getting better, but
yeah, Ed Cook loves to kind of bag on Americans as being, you know, decades behind on memory, although you're very quickly catching up.
Yeah, it's changed a lot in the past few years.
So very cool. Well, Nelson, I don't want to take too much of your time. I really appreciate you making the time. If people want to get in touch with you, they want to learn more, maybe hire you as a speaker or a teacher, as you put it, how do they go ahead and get in touch with you?
Yep, they can go to my website, my charity website, climbformemory.org.
Okay.
And you'll learn about what I do with my charity, but also you can reach out to me personally and let me know what you would like to use me for, if anything.
Awesome. We'll definitely put that in the show notes. Are you, in addition to the book, are you kind of blogging, tweeting, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I try to tweet and blog as much as I can. The blog is on my Climb for Memory website. So yeah.
Awesome. Perfect.
And then also the Extreme Memory Tournament, you can follow along that too. That's extremememorytournament.com.
Awesome. No misspellings, no nothing?
Nope, all spelled out.
Perfect. And we'll also put that in the show notes. So I want to wish you really, really good luck, both on the next attempt on Everest and, of course, on the upcoming memory games.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. So I hope we do keep in touch. And it was a pleasure talking to you today.
Perfect. Likewise. Looking forward to talking in the future.
Indeed. All right, Nelson, you have a great day.
Cheers. You too.
Thanks for tuning in to the Becoming Superhuman podcast. For more great skills and strategies, or for links to any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit www.becomingasuperhuman.com/podcast. We'll see you next time.